I do not know much about gods, but I think that the river is a strong brown god. Sullen, untamed, and intractable. Patient to some degree, at first recognized as a frontier. Useful, untrustworthy as a conveyor of commerce. Then only a problem confronting the builder of bridges. The problem once solved, the brown god is almost forgotten by the dwellers in cities, however implacable. Keeping his seasons and rages, destroyer, reminder of what men choose to forget. 1,800,000 people visited Cincinnati, Ohio, and its sister cities across the river, Covington and Newport, Kentucky, over 4 days from October the 15th to October the 18th, 1992. Why did they come? The answer begins when there was only water and ice.
The Ohio River has a very, very unique history to it. Unlike many other rivers that we find, the beginnings of the Ohio River go back to the very formation of the bedrock lying beneath the waters. If we go back into the Devonian and Silurian periods of 350 to 430 million years ago, the bottom of the Ohio River was an ocean. And the bedrock that is formed now was the bottom of the ocean that has solidified into limestone formations. In fact, the North American continent was located 20 degrees south of the equator. And during the hundreds of millions of years since then, we've moved up to our present location. We move into a period of time beginning actually, a million years ago, lasting up until about 15,000 years ago. And that was the beginning of the Ice Age. And during that time, we actually had these glaciers that were hundreds of miles wide, miles high, thick, solid, earth-moving chunks and blocks of ice coming down out of the upper ice fields of Canada, scouring away the land, moving boulders as much as 16 tons in size. Well, we know that those early Kansan and Illinoisan glaciers came to about what is the Ohio River. That was their southernmost boundary. And we know that also, as they began to melt and recede, we had vast quantities of meltwater rushing off these huge blocks of ice. And as they did so, they began to wash out a lot of that overburden material that covered up the limestone bedrock that had been formed hundreds of millions of years ago. As that began to occur, the very early forming of the Ohio River Valley began to happen. Then we move into the latter part of the glaciation periods, and that was the Wisconsin Glacier. And the meltwater off of that last glacier event actually washed out all the rest of that material and carved the narrow river channel that we call the Ohio River Valley.
The lush valleys this new river spawned were dense natural gardens ruled by plant life and animals now long removed and forgotten. Bison moved in herds over a mile wide, leaving paths through the woods that would become the white settlers' first roads. The green parakeet, the lynx, wildcat, panther, elk, otter, bear, and wolf thrived along the river. Humans have lived along this river and lived off its bounty almost as long as the rivers existed. Native Americans of Asian ancestry who migrated across ancient land bridges drew spiritual as well as physical sustenance from this awesome body of water. All hunted, fished, gathered, and cultivated in the basin of this great river, the Iroquois, referred to as Oyo. Beautiful river. River of the white foam. Great white water. The Ohio River.
The Ohio River is a very important waterway in North America. It was for many of the early tribes, including the prehistoric tribes, a passageway through the middle part of this eastern part of the continent. The Shawnees accepted this land in Ohio as a gift from the Miami tribe, which was at that time living on it. The Miamis were very much afraid of the Iroquois, and they were also afraid of the whites who were beginning to come over the Allegheny Mountains, and they knew they would eventually come into this land. They needed something as a buffer between them and the whites, and what better than to have this warlike tribe of the Shawnees to be that buffer, to fight the battles that were going to need to be fought. The Indians living along the river knew that they could not protect the land south of the river too well, but they wanted to make this river the border between the whites and the Indians. And the whites initially agreed to this, but there were infractions of this constantly, almost from the time that the treaties were made. As a result, wars broke out, and early settlements along the Ohio River, such as Wheeling and Logstown and Marietta and so on, were highly contested areas. The whites kept coming. They kept floating down the rivers in great flotillas of rafts, building cabins, encroaching into the Ohio country. And eventually the forts were built, Fort Harmer at Marietta, Fort Washington at Cincinnati. These were the launching points for the whites who were still moving into the Ohio country, trying to take this land from the Indians. This occurred just about at the time when steam travel began showing up on the Ohio River and on the Mississippi. And it also coincided with Tecumseh's rise in power. Tecumseh felt that somehow they could gain this land back from the whites, that the only way they could do it would be if he would form a great confederacy. Tecumseh had hoped to bring all these tribes together with a great sign, and this great sign was an earthquake that he predicted. He told them that their abodes would tumble to the ground, their cattle would fall, their water jugs would crack, forests would tumble over, lakes would form where there hadn't been any, rivers would run backwards. All these things occurred with the great earthquake at St. Genevieve on the Mississippi River, where the Ohio River joins it. This is an area where an earthquake had never occurred before in recorded history, and it was a very, very powerful earthquake. The idea that Tecumseh had was good, but it didn't work. The reason it didn't work was simply because he had a younger brother who wanted control and power, and in Tecumseh's absence while visiting the other tribes, he undermined Tecumseh's influence and caused the other tribes to back out. At this point, the Ohio River, Ohio, all these lands were suddenly open for development, and the Ohio River then became this great highway into the wilderness.
In 1811, fire came to the water. Designed by Robert Livingston and Robert Fulton, the first steamboat to sail on western waters was the New Orleans. The Indians would call the steamboat the Fire Canoe, and its first journey upriver from Louisville to Cincinnati, at the same time Tecumseh's prophecy came to pass, exemplified the futility of the Indian struggle against the whites. With the advent of the steamboat and the Industrial Revolution that it foreshadowed, Native Americans would never again be able to control the Ohio River, and their eradication from the river valleys of the Ohio now would only be a matter of a few years. Early white settlers set sail in flatboats, keelboats, and lumber and log rafts, moving over the water more awkwardly than the Indians, but resourcefully using the river to transport people and goods great distances.
The type of people that used a flatboat or built a flatboat were farmers. Farmers they needed to sell their crops, their sometimes livestock, sometimes whiskey. But they loaded up a flatboat after they got done building it, and the whole family helped, neighbors helped, whoever lived in the vicinity that wanted to sell their goods at harvest time. They got together and they built a boat, exactly like this one. They varied in styles, but they were all made out of rough cut wood, hand sawed, cross cut sawed, and once they got it done and completed, all the men folk would take the boat downriver, and when they got to the town where they were going to sell it at, sell their product, they sold the boat for lumber, and then hiked back to their houses. Flatboaters didn't care for the steamships because of the wakes they threw, and the steamships didn't care for the flatboaters because they couldn't steer. They were all over the river at the mercy of the current, more or less. They had sweeps, tail sweeps or stern sweeps to help steer them, but anything could happen. Wind could blow them off course or whatever. So they probably crashed a lot into the steamships. So eventually the steamships won out and flatboats were history. Explorers or settlers also built them, not to sell harvest, but they built a boat just to go find a new place to live. Indians might have been harassing them where they were presently living, so they said, well, we'll go downriver and find a new place to live. And they built a boat like this, and when they got to where they were going, they'd take the boat apart, the lumber, they would build into a temporary cabin, and the women would sleep in there while the men worked on a log cabin, a permanent structure. And whatever their belongings were, they unloaded and put in a temporary cabin, and they had a new place to live.
But then in 1811 came the steamboat, and the steamboat age immediately burst forth in popularity and prosperity. By 1845, there were approximately 11,000 paddle wheelers plying their services on the Ohio and Mississippi rivers. Although our romanticized images of the steamboat lean toward opulence, most of these vessels were relatively small and utilitarian. So rigorous was their work in the river conditions that the average paddle wheeler was in service only 5 years. Flour, pork, whiskey, tobacco, and cotton were their most common freight. But at least as important as the steamboat's transportation of these commercial commodities was the way the steamboat revolutionized human travel throughout the Midwest and South. Within 20 years of the New Orleans fateful voyage, steamboats on the Ohio and Mississippi were carrying thousands of passengers every day. Passengers on these journeys were a mix of frontier farmers and traders, flatboatmen returning upriver for their next journey down, European immigrants, and businessmen. The few who could afford first-class passage rode in style.
First-class passengers lived in the cabin. I mean, they had staterooms and the meals were fabulous. Then there were deck passengers. This was the only way to get around those days. The deck passengers would have to bring their own food, fix it themselves, and stay down on the main deck. The steamboat travel was the most comfortable and luxurious that there was to be had in this country. And it's said that a lot of times that the steamboats had better tables than even the finest hotels in the metropolitan areas. It was the finest living to be had in America.
No look at the steamboat era is complete without the mention of steamboat racing. This cavalier and often dangerous sport drew spectators scurrying to the river shores, brought cheering passengers to the decks of the boats, challenged the manhood of captains and crews, and elicited wagering of the highest magnitude. In the words of the travel writer of the time, Baron von Gerstner, Americans never like to remain one behind the other. On the contrary, each wants to get ahead of the rest. When two steamboats happen to get alongside each other, the passengers will encourage the captains to run a race which the latter agree to. The life of an American is indeed only a constant racing, and why should he fear it on board the steamboats?
And the Chris Green was going to Huntington, the Betsy Ann was going to Pittsburgh, and they just accidentally had a race one day, and then they scheduled 3 races, 1 with the Chris Green and 2 with the Tom Green. Well, the Betsy Ann is a good fast boat, but the Green boats won all of those races. In one of them, the Green boat, I think it was the Chris, her bow crossed the finish line first, and the Betsy Ann stern crossed the finish line first. She was about 30 feet longer than the Betsy Ann, the Chris Green was. But there were certain staged races, but the real races were race for a freight bow, The boat that got there first got the freight pile.
In 1855, an invention came along that distilled all the romanticism, danger, and bold prosperity of the steamboat era in a cacophonous yet charming form of music. And it also gave its captain a cunning advantage in a steamboat race. That invention was the steam calliope, or calliope.
Some people say calliope, some say calliope. It's the voice of the river. If the river, the Ohio and the Mississippi and the tributaries have such a thing as a voice, it would be one of these. 32 steam whistles on a manifold, played from steam of which all boats had in excess. They were originally invented by a beekeeper in Connecticut named Stoddard. And the original purpose was to put in a church steeple as a sort of a pipe organ, a super organ. Of course, that didn't work out very well because in the cold Connecticut winters, the pipes froze up. But along came P.T. Barnum, Phineas Taylor Barnum, the great American showman. And he decided this is the thing for his circuses. And he is the one that put the name Calliope, which is a Greek muse of sound. Since then, all steamboats, showboats, have had steam organs or calliopes. And they announced the boat's presence in town, entertained, served as a Pied Piper, and also were used in steamboat races. When two steamboats were racing, a lot of times the captain would order the calliope turned on so everybody come over to one side, and if it was a side wheel boat, one of the wheels would come out of the water. The other boat would kind of go around in circles. People are going to flock to the river. The river is one of the three highways of the world, and it's a great source of fascination for not only those of us that work on the river, but for people who live near it and play on it. And it'll always be flowing south.
Although few people realized it at the time or were willing to admit it, by the 1850s the demise of the steamboat era was at hand. The first rails were laid on the East Coast in 1829, and by 1850, railroads connected all the major Ohio River ports with all other major markets. Still, the steamboaters' love of the river and the steamboating life being what it was, it would be 50 years before the steamboat era's beacon flickered out completely after a steady and unrelenting decline in river commerce. River commerce had to find a way to compete with the railroads, and ultimately that would be the towboat, the mighty diesel-powered vessel that modernized the old packet boat technique of pushing flatboats strapped together off their bows to increase their shipping capacities. Today, the rivers are populated by an ever-increasing number of pleasure boats, and by tows hauling thousands of tons of coal, gravel, grains, and petrochemicals. But the steamboat era is hardly forgotten.
Here come the tall stacks on the Ohio. Old-time steamboats churning into town. Steam whistles echo across the river. Paddle wheels are turning round and round. Happy music feeds the great occasion. Festival delights invite the throng. So come and join the celebration. The tall stacks are coming to town. And here they come right now. Here come the tall stacks on the Ohio. Old-time steamboats churning into town. Steam whistles echo across the river. Paddle wheels are turning round and round and round. Happy music feeds the great occasion. Festival delights celebration. Yes, the tall stacks are coming to town. Oh yes, the tall stacks are coming to town. Oh yeah.
We started working on this event back in 1988 for the city's bicentennial, and had the idea because so many other cities were successful in bringing the tall ships to their cities. So we looked to Mark Twain for the phrase that he coined, tall stacks, and thought that since Cincinnati's heritage is so attached to the steamboat, we would create a national festival called Tall Stacks. You can see that we have the festivities on both sides of the river. It's 125 acres. We have river taxis and buses connecting all the entertainment and activities. There's 8 stages with over 300 hours of entertainment over the 4 days. We have events on the river throughout the day, tugboat tug-of-wars and riverboat races, captain rowboat races. It's one activity after another to entertain over 1 million people that we're expecting here over the 4 days. One of the pleasures of working on an event like this is to recreate a time period in American history, and that's what we're trying to do with the 200 costume actors that are walking around, the decorations on shore, the entertainment that, again, is all river related. Those kinds of characteristics separate this event from others.
You get down to the event itself, setup. Setup began about a week ago when we finally got secured with a site, and we started setting up Tom Sawyerville. And of course, we're building this whole children's area, and it's just built from the ground up. The design team from the University of Cincinnati has put together a design, and it's fantastic. The color over there and the nature of the activities for the children. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we started getting tents in. Tents are coming from several different purveyors, and we have every square inch of both sides of the river that we can use covered. Right now, vendors are setting up. We've got all the food and beverage operators are coming in, and there's a real hubbub of activity. The different television stations are all getting in gear. National news is in, so you can see the kind of popularity that the event's bringing. We're anticipating that what can go wrong will, and part of our setup and the management is a team of specialists that if there is a disaster or something that happens on the river or on land that's of a real problem nature, evacuation or severe weather, this team gets together and we've got a plan of action that we can take depending on the nature of the incident.
They pick me up in the parking lot at 4:20 and take me to where I'm working. What can I do for you, sir? Scott, yeah. There, step outside, it won't work inside. Thank you. I do this job because it's very good for Cincinnati, and that's my idea of a terrific thing to do. I take care of all the equipment, and to make sure that everything is in working order. We have to have as many going out as we had coming in, and that's not easy. We smile every morning. It's 4:20. We're ready when the first people get ready to work. We take care of all the volunteers, and we try to make their day start out well and keep them in equipment. If it doesn't work, we try again. But we're usually here till 12:30, 1:30, or 2 o'clock in the morning. The people here have been working, some of them since yesterday, and they work till 5 o'clock in the morning. And you turn around and they're back again. We had, I think, about 4,000 fourth graders here, and they took the time and the efforts of a lot of volunteers and staff in order to properly take care of them. We have every possible safeguard for people's safety, and the Tall Stacks Committee is extremely interested and careful with the physically challenged. We've made all sorts of arrangements to try and make this a good event for them as well as everybody else, and we've done a darn good job.
Tall Stacks is an event that's taken us about 12 to 14 months to plan for. We worked with the steering committee, literally hundreds of employees to assemble a group of officers to police this event. Basically, we've worked in 3 shifts, in the morning, afternoon, and evening. It's required the services of about 30 police officers for each shift. Half that detail is addressing the traffic problems that are associated with it. The other half of the detail is addressing crowd control problems here inside the event itself. Our main problem has been the age of some of the groups that have come down, that there's elderly people, some have stumbled and fallen. We've had some broken bones. The fire division's here to address that and done an ample job of addressing injuries. Traffic problems have really been a nightmare, but again, there's been a lot of patience on the part of the general public, and that has helped us a lot with our mission here this year.
Generally, we have 8 paramedics that cover the whole city, and for an event like this, we're over a 4-day period, we're expecting 1.5 million people. We brought 12 extra paramedics down on each and every day to cover the injuries and illnesses that may occur down here. We're running about 80 to 100 injuries per day. Most of them are broken bones or minor injuries, scrapes and bruises, people falling down steps and tripping over certain things. Okay, we consider those basic life support runs. We do have some extra EMTs down here and an extra ambulance unit to take these basic injuries to the hospitals. We have 2 basic advanced life support units set up, one here at Jenna Butler Street by the command post and the other one on a public landing. We have 3 sets of roving teams in the crowd, and we're in radio contact with all of them. So when someone does go down, we can have someone on the scene within 2 or 3 minutes.
I performed on the Mississippi Queen a few years ago. I'm an opera singer, and I got to go on the Mississippi Queen for a couple of weeks to sing. So I came back to see all the action.
You can only do something like this at Cincinnati. Several cities in the United States. I think Cincinnati is one of them. They have a great riverfront.
I love it. I never understood how big these things were until you come down and actually see them.
It's very impressive, very impressive.
It was neat. I liked it. Everybody did. Everybody had a good time.
I think it was absolutely fantastic. Just love the whole thing.
I like that slow pace.
I think it's great.
Oh, I think it's great.
Tony Tiger's got the word for it. Great.
We will remember the boats from back in the 30s and 40s.
We're enjoying it very much in spite of the rain.
It's like the old times.
If you turn the rain off, I'll enjoy it more, but this is great. This is spectacular.
Stories untold. Oh, Lord, that river runs deep. Yeah, that river runs deep. Straight to the bottom of my soul. Yeah, that river runs deep. Oh, baby, don't you know? Don't you know?
My dad had always wanted to have what shall I say, a luxury vessel on the rivers. He was a steamboat captain and dreamed of that during the time that he was operating the then Green Line steamers. Our family had been in the business since 1890. By the time the war was over, my dad put a bid in on the Delta King and was not successful, and then put a bid in for the Delta Queen, buying it as essentially government surplus. And he was the only bidder, so he was successful. I think the purchase price was $46,000. And the boat, as you see it today, is not nearly the same boat as it was back then. And we started operating from Cincinnati in the spring of 1947. The way that the Mississippi Queen and the Delta Queen are being operated today is just the realization of my dad's and my mother's dream.
I've been a captain for a year and a half. My brother Tim and I have owned this business for 3 years. This Tall Stacks event is the greatest thing we've ever done. It's very, very exciting to deal with this many people. Every cruise that I am on is a challenge for me to see if I can get every one of those people to have a smiling face when they get off and say, this is the best boat I've been on. And that's what they're saying. It is so exciting, you just can't imagine.
Sun shines on the pilot house from morning till the evening comes. I get tired and so damn dry. I dance with the demon rum. Kill both men and gamblers. Can't drink as much as me. If the river was gin, I'd jump right in and drown in ecstasy.
After writing and talking about the event for a year to journalists and news people from all over the country, now that it's here, the response has been tremendous in terms of local, regional, and national coverage. We had a crew from the NBC Today show here. Willard Scott was live on the riverfront Thursday morning. That was a lot of fun. The NBC Saturday Today folks shot some things Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and then went live Saturday morning. And CBS Sunday morning with Charles Kuralt was here all week and put together a piece that aired Sunday morning, and it was fantastic. We're exposing Cincinnati and Northern Kentucky to viewers all over the country, and that is just invaluable to this event and to the people of Cincinnati.
Well, Tall Stacks has been a very successful event this year. We've had approximately 124,000 tickets. We sold approximately 115,000 of them. What we have left were Thursday that did not sell out. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday have been sold out completely. Our dinner cruises had sold out as early as the second week in May. They had all been sold out. Probably the biggest problem that we've had is that there are not enough tickets for everybody. Everybody wants to buy a ticket now that they're here and they see the boats and they're real excited about it and they want to get on a boat, and we just don't have any left for them. It's been a great event.
Yeah, we're Mountains Barbecue from Fleming County, Kentucky, downtown Muses Mill. We're the Clark brothers, Mountain, myself, Dave, Danny Joe, a couple partners. We just do this for fun. Got a few secrets. Danny Joe's the biggest on that.
Right there, what do you call it?
Kentucky Creek water at its best, fellas.
Hey, don't pour that in there. Bourbon.
Well.
Flatlanders. All right, Dave, entertain them.
Fire!
Good work. Boo. Put her down. Boo. You're fired. Y'all hungry?
Good day, mate. How are you going? Yeah, we're on the ball here at the Tall Stacks. As you see, we've got a busy booth here. And it's mainly because we sell plucked and headless chicken. Then we got shrimp on the barbie, and we've got pepper steak sandwich, all cooked in Outback Jack Super Secret sauce, and that's the difference. So we go through about 3,000 pounds of chicken, 3,000 pounds of beef, 200 cases or 100 sacks of onions. We go through a lot of products. In fact, we have a problem getting rid of all the garbage we have by the time we finish. You know, it's moving out that fast. The thing is, you're serving good food, they come back for more.
We usually sell the Zoomer, which is a met with the cheddar cheese in it, and it's a fantastic sausage. It's only made for the Strauss House. We're selling Italian sausages, we're selling Cajun wedges, pizza rolls, crab cakes, and chicken platters. This has probably been one of the greatest events that we've had, and business is fantastic. Saturday was the best day. Today is a good day also. Cincinnati is just a great town.
One of the key components of Tall Stacks this year was to have all the service come by water. So we had 7 different vessels all handling different phases. We handled over 70,000 meals over the weekend, including the visiting boats as well as the boats at Beebe River Boats. We handled over 48,000 tons of garbage over the whole weekend, including both sides of the river. And as well as that, we coordinated 65 charters to all of the visiting boats. It was a major feat. It took over a year and a half to really put it all together. It's amazing how well it went. My crew is very tired, and they're all looking forward to some sleep. But all in all, it was a tremendous success. It's a world-class event in a world-class city. Just great that Cincinnati showed up like they did, and all the bad rain, storm, and wind and cold. It's just a tribute to this city that we can do that.
Can we predict the future of this mighty river? Over the past 200 years, the civilization that reaps its bounty today, our civilization, has done more to transform the beautiful river and its surrounding landscape than any other force of nature or man in the river's previous 10,000 to 15,000 year history. Seeing the Ohio River's future is only possible if we can understand its present and its past.
Dump everything in the river. You don't do that anymore.
Creatures continue to become extinct. Waters continue to become so polluted they cannot support life. And this is not a process I see being reversed totally.
The people are wonderful, the boats are beautiful, and it's a beautiful river. What more can you ask?
I hope this event's remembered by how it does recall a time period and tie people into their context and their history in ways that other things can't.
The surprising thing about the river today is that it is on such an upswing.
There's always going to be a boat coming around that next bend.
The 12 miles to Marietta is a fairly placid stretch and not devoid of history nor of modern interest. What you see of it will perhaps not be what I may tell you here. 10 years hence my prattle will have been forgotten, and your memories of this steamboat trip will be the slate sound of raindrops on a smooth river, the echo of the pilot's whistle bouncing amongst Kentucky crags, the slight tremor of the stateroom, the glistening droplets on the railings during an early morning fog, a jaybird in a willow scolding the boat, a 5 p.m. thunderhead mirrored over an island, the poetry of the river, elusive, original, permanent, no beginning, no end. Beauty must be fragile to endure, devoid of guarantee, contact, or handcuff. The river is self-replenishing, self-reliant, and what man borrows of it must be repaid. The radiance of its countenance passeth understanding. Its judgment is sudden and terrible to transgressors. A boy hardly haired out understands this best. Nothing is real but the river, and all else is sham.
Where does an old-time riverman go after he's passed away? Does his soul still keep a watch on the deep for the rest of the river days? Does he then come back as a channel cat, or the wasps that light on the wheel, or the birds that fly through a summer sky, or the fish swimming under the keel? Where does an old-time pilot go after he's stood his last watch? Does he fall by the ear of the man who steers, saying, hold her on that notch? There's a gentle sneeze in the river breeze, saying, son, I'm going to bed. Then they light their pipes and go off in the night. Or was that fireflies instead? Engineer go after he's cooled her down, gone up the hill to never come back from a quiet side of town? Does his soul live on in the engine's song while the striker checks the gear? Still afloat on an old steamboat after